So, Christopher,
Yeah.
could you explain to me again why I can't park my car in the garage?
Because your husband is king of the nerds and owns a Flak gun.
Okay.
And not just any Flak gun, a Flakvierling, which is quad 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. It takes up considerably more space than its single gun counterpart.
Is that this?
Yeah, well, this is parts of it. This isn't all of it. But,
Let's start with this, the big pokey outy thing that I hit my knee on all the time.
big pokey outy thing. Okay. This is called the Unterlafet, or lower mount. You see it goes, follow the curve that way, follow the curve that way, back to about here. And this is the main base for the entire gun to sit on. You can see this circle here is where I call it the clamshell assembly. There's a case that has a bearing and everything in it, and the gears to turn the gun mounts to the floor of the Unterlafet right there. So these right here are the two bearings that the gun rotates on horizontally, and the other one it rotates on vertically. And this is the piece that the guns all bolt to. This is the Oberlafet, or upper mount. And what you're looking at here is actually the back of it. This is the top of it. And this is where the gunner seat attaches and would stick out in space right here. In the wall here, you can see the actual part of the ring with the gear teeth on it that's used for traversing the gun horizontally. That sits in there. This wall in the middle here is where that bearing bolts. And then inside here, you can sort of see them. There's two big cast aluminum structures that look like dog bowls with a hole cut in the side of them. Those two things bolt back to back and mount on both sides of the bearing in the center of the Oberlafet. And again, one of those exact same bearings you saw earlier is what it's used for. It's kind of nice that they have the same bearing for both positions.
I can imagine.
But so that way, I'm lucky. I only have to restore one of them. The one that came out of the upper was once it was cleaned, was in perfect working condition. I'm also very lucky that all of the lower part of the mount is solid and intact. The one in Canada at the Borden Armor Museum, these are rotted almost completely away. And they've got damage going up 2 or 3 inches on the whole side of their Oberlafet on both sides.
Got it.
Yeah, so this, I was lucky this was in a cool, dry climate in Western Canada.
Cool. All right, well, what about these things?
Oh, these things. This and this are the swing arms and axles for the trailer. When you see the trailer, it's not like you'd imagine. It's a big wishbone. And right at the widest part of the wishbone, these attach. And the gun doesn't actually sit on the trailer, it actually attaches to the underside of the trailer, which is kind of interesting, which is what this big pin at the front right here is for. This latches to the trailer, and then at the back end of the trailer there's 2 hoists that you have to hand crank and lift the gun up and then lock it up to the bottom side of the trailer.
Okay.
The trailer is up north because it is way too big to be in this room at the same time as everything else.
Okay.
And then sitting right next to that, right there, and another one right here by your feet, those are the adjustable feet to balance the gun out. And another third one mounts right here. So.
What's that tray thing right there? That thing?
This?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a toolbox.
Oh.
And it locks into that position right there. And it took me about a year and a half to get that loose and get it out of there.
So that's what that swearing was.
If you back up for one, that's what all the swearing was.
Ooh, can you keep that on there and not crush that?
Yeah, it's not going to hurt it. And this is what the guns actually mount to. This one would be on the left side of the mount. The Flak gun actually slides and locks into here. You rotate this handle, these 2 pins move in and lock it there, and it's a 7.5 foot long gun, so it's pushing 3 meters long. It's not little. And 2 of them, and they're about 45, 50 kilos, 100 pounds each.
Okay.
And the gun's mounting here now. It's interesting, when the guns fire, they don't shoot the brass out the side like you would think with like a AR-15 or a civilian rifle. All the brass on this ejects down and into the center of the mount, through the dog bowls and out the bottom, and then comes out on a chute that feeds into this hopper over here.
Okay.
And then that door you can see sitting here should be the other way.
Oh.
But it sits like that. And you can open this to access the empty brass. And that holds about 550 rounds, which brings us to feeding the gun. These right here, this is the magazine rack. When the gunner's platform is set up, these sit right by the gunner's feet. And you can see there's should be 8 magazines in each rack, plus the 2 that are already in the guns. It gives you 10 magazines for each side of the gun. Each magazine holds 20 rounds, and each gun fires about 450 rounds a minute. So you can see the problem is a quad 20 millimeter flak with 20 round magazines on it goes through ammunition very fast, and you're constantly reloading. And then these magazines have to be pulled out, the empty ones are pulled out of the rack, and there's specific people whose job it is just to load the magazines. And this is the tool they do that with. You can see this lever here, just away you go.
Oh, and there's a magazine in it, right?
Yeah, and there's the magazine locked in it right there.
All right.
And this is, I was just talking about the loader's platform. This is the one for the right side of the gun mount. This whole piece of this should be horizontal and parallel to the ground.
Okay.
This piece folds down and weight holds it in place, and then this seat folds up. So then you wind up with a gunner facing seated like this, but looking this way.
Okay.
So the magazine, and then this is where he puts one of his feet.
All right.
And he can hook his heel on it. It's like a climbing post on a telephone pole. And this is the magazine rack for the right side. The one we just showed you is the one for the left side. As you can see, this one still has some of the original wood. And this is actually a piece from the loader's platform.
Wow.
I have a half dozen or so original pieces of wood that we can work from to get dimensions to make reproduction.
And is this the seat right here?
Yeah, this is the loader's seat.
Got it.
The interesting thing about the Germans is they can't ever engineer something the same way twice. The loader seats have very low rise. So this is sitting at your belt level. And if you see on the shelf right there, you're looking at the back of a gunner's seat in tan, right by the end of those 2 poles. And you can see the backrest on that comes up a good 30, 40 centimeters higher. And actually rests just below your rib cage. Because when the gunner is firing, he is looking through the sight, which attaches right here.
Got it.
And these are actually front to back on each other. This one should be turned 180 degrees. But as the gunner sits there, this piece is constantly moving up and down with the gun sight on it. So he has to be able to tip back in his seat to track it. And to keep him from falling off of his seat, he has the higher back.
Makes sense.
As compared to loaders, because no one cares if a loader falls off. And then this is early production, all cast aluminum. The ones we're used to seeing are the stamped steel ones. And then right here, instead of the Flakvierling 40 computer, they'll have that big square 38A Bakelite computer. But that comes after this. You'll see this in model kits being sold as a mid-production with this style computer on it, or a blockout plate here. It's not, it's actually early production. All 5 Flakvierlings that exist in North America, mine's the only privately owned one. One is owned by the Canadian government on the Flak Panzer IV project at Borden. One's at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is the one closest to mine in age. It's the second oldest one. And then there's the one that was at Aberdeen and the one at the Air Force Museum. All 5 of them are made by the same manufacturer over a 2-year period. And you can just see how drastically the design changed from the beginning to the end. But so these are the early production aluminum sidearms. The sight base would be almost identical on the stamped steel ones. I need to find some parts for the fine adjustment on them.
Got it.
Let's see, what else do we have? This is the next piece up on the workbench to be disassembled, cleaned, and reassembled. This is the gearbox that mounts and elevates the guns. It's odd because they use this gearbox as the mount for the other gearbox, which traverses the guns.
Okay.
And axle or drive shaft goes down from it, hooks onto a pinion gear, and takes us around that big giant rack gear that we saw earlier. This one's going to be fun. In taking the other one apart, I learned all the tricks to getting this apart, because this is the 2-speed elevation and traverse.
Can you turn it 180 so I can see the other side? Or is it just boring?
It's just boring.
Oh, okay.
Up.
Got it.
Inside this, there's 2 sets of clutches. As you start to crank, for every turn of the crank, you will get 7 degrees of traverse. I know on the traverse it's 7 degrees. If you squeeze this lever in and keep cranking, it now goes to 21 degrees.
Okay, so what's this thing over here?
Oh, these are actually multiple things from multiple places. This curved piece with this light gray paint you see on here has got nothing to do with World War II. This is Canadian capture paint. So when you go to a Canadian museum, anything that's enemy material that was captured is painted this light gray. World War I, World War II, doesn't matter. So anyways, this is the armor mantlets that go around the gun. Some guns came out of the factory with just these mounted on them without the big elephant ear pieces and the armor that goes around the this piece right here, the equilibrator that helps you raise and lower the guns. No armor around it, but you could add it. Inside you'll see, unfortunately, we have to demill stuff to import it to the US. So there's a Flak 38 receiver by serial number, was on this one when it was captured by Captain Farley Mowat and the 1st Canadian Museum Collection Team. These right here, well, here you can see another piece of wood that came off the gunner's platforms. These are the bottom half of the trigger system. That's this elaborate system of cables that's used to fire the guns. Push one trigger pedal on the right, these 2 guns fire diagonally. Push the other pedal, these 2 guns fire. Push them both, they all fire. But these are the pulleys for that very complicated cable system. This is actually super rare. Only a couple of these we know of in existence. This is the Flakvierling 40 computer that I'm hoping to be able to restore one day. But wait, there's more. This is the elevation and travel lock. You would swing this up on a hinge. It lines up, and then you lower the guns and lock them into the ends of these tubes right here. And then as you lift this up into place, it locks the traverse system to the lower mount, the Unterlafett.
Okay.
So now your guns can't elevate and can't depress and can't move side to side.
Is that just for towing?
Yeah, that's just when you're towing, because you don't want, you saw those delicate gears inside that gearbox. You do not want those just getting slapped around the whole time you're towing. So sitting around are various pieces and parts. Like this is the mount for the level that goes on the front of the Unterlafett. Since mine is an early production, my seats are actually made out of Bakelite.
Wow.
As opposed to stamped steel. So this is a very early plastic. It's non-conductive. It's fairly heavy duty. This one's got a little field damage, but it's a nice early production Bakelite seat.
Yeah.
And I need 2 more just like it. Here you can see cradle for one of the guns that still has a piece in it from when it was demilitarized. But this is one of the sleds that the gun recoils back on. These down here are the buffers I was talking about that are used to slow down the recoil of the gun. And that...
Well, it's all making sense now.
Yeah, we can see people. Well, one day
it's a good thing you're cute.
Here. Huh?
It's a good thing you're cute.
Yeah, it's always a good thing that I'm cute. But here, this tan piece and this piece are the adjuster for height and distance in and out for the gunner seat. These are the arms the gunner seat is carried on. Then there's a spring-loaded piece that locks it in elevation. On that arm we saw earlier, on the the Oberlift.
Here.
This is the battery box for a Flakvierling. It's the same physical box that goes on a Flak 38, and you can see it's about big enough for a motorcycle battery to fit into. The Flak 38 does not have this screw type fitting on the side of it. It has a line that comes out from under here and goes up to protect the wiring. So they're the identical box, but the only way to tell a Vierling box version is to see.
So what's this thing?
Okay, this is the Oberlift, the upper mount that we looked at earlier from the other end. And here we're looking at it straight from the bottom. And here you can see this is the gear that you traverse the gun on. So turn the gun horizontally on this gear. This gear and some other pieces fit on here. And then there's a big cover that goes on and bolts together, holds the whole thing together. And then through this opening right here is where a big pinion gear actually drives around on this and is what turns the thing.
Got it.
There's a gearbox that sits, if you look down in here, there's a gearbox that sits right here.
Okay.
And a drive shaft comes out of the top of it, goes through this hole and up through, so remember I said the traverse box, or the elevation gearbox hooked here?
Right.
And then the traverse box hooks to the side of it?
Yeah.
Well, that all hooks together. When you turn one crank, guns go up, guns go down. Turn the other crank, guns go left, guns go right. Then all that's inside of this area. There's these huge buffer system for the triggers. I don't know what, it's just so the gunners didn't feel the triggers pulsing when the gun fired. It's a huge waste of material and engineering.
What's that?
These two platforms are where the triggers actually come up through these slots right here.
Okay.
And the gunner it's a place for the gunner to rest his feet, and then he manipulates the trigger by pushing his toes forward.
Oh.
And trigger here, and like I said, push this one, fires diagonal pair of guns. Push this one, fires the other diagonal pair of guns.
Oh.
Now, this bearing that you see here is an actual original bearing that came off this mount, and it was the one that sits right in the middle right here on this divider wall. The bearing sits there. Okay, and then the two dog bowls I talked about earlier bolt together through the bearing and hold it in place on that. So then the dog bowls will actually spin freely until you start hooking everything else up to them. But so I was lucky. This is the original elevation bearing, and it is in perfect condition. You can see it still has all the German markings on it. You can see down here on this face the giant Waffenamt. And then the other bearing needs restoration. All the balls are pretty much corroded in place. I have a way to repair it that we're gonna hopefully have great success with. But yeah, this is the original elevation. The one that's rusted up was the traverse bearing that sat down here inside of the piece I call a clamshell that everything bolts together inside of, allows the gun to pivot.
Cool.
But yeah.
And
but
what's the square top thing?
This?
Yeah. Is that where that battery went?
No. No, this is where the battery goes.
Got it.
Oh, well, here, actually. So the battery box, the main battery box we looked at before that holds the motorcycle size battery fits right here. This is where the sidearm bolts on, comes this way, hits a hinge or the pivot point, and then comes back this way with the sight mounted on it, elevates up and down with the guns. This is where that, sitting on the workbench, you saw the
Oh yeah.
the elevation gearbox, that bolts right here.
With the up and down, up thing.
With up and down. It's got
seven
that,
degrees.
yeah, 7 degrees and then 21 degrees of travel or whatever. And then on the side of that gearbox is where the traverse gearbox would fit, the one that handles left to right.
Okay.